You're listening to Daycare Overhaul, doing childcare better, presented by Childcare BizHelp.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Daycare Overhaul,
where we do childcare better.
I'm Justina.
I'm Caroline.
And we're here today to talk about first impressions.
Ooh, good topic. First impressions.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say you sure dressed the part today.
I was going to say we intentionally dressed the part today.
We did.
For everyone that's listening, as they can't really see us, but that's okay. We got a little gussied up.
We did, because we were making a great first impression.
Can I tell you a story about this?
Sure.
Okay, so I was getting ready, and I want to be one of those people that can wear lipstick. And for the men listening, I know you're going to not relate to this, but maybe some of the ladies are. I really want to be able to wear lipstick, and I put it on, and I feel like I look like the Joker. So I think I just can't wear it.
Well, so if you notice my lips, and for those of you who are not watching, I myself would love to wear red lipstick too, but I cannot because I feel the same way.
I think I just need to wear gloss. That's all I can do.
Well, so we have to dazzle them with something else. So we've got some jewelry on. Yes. We've got our necklaces on.
Our
dresses. I've got a suit on today. We've got our hair done and our makeup. So we're ready to make a great first impression today.
To each other.
Like
it's the first time we're meeting.
But anyways, that sets the stage for what we're really going to be talking today about.
Yes.
And that's, putting out your very best every day at your childcare center, not just, in how you personally look as a teacher or a leader in your organization, but how does your facility look? Mm-hmm. How does the inside, the outside of your facility look? Are you making a really good first impression?
Right. I'm excited.
All right. Well, let's dive in. So, let's start off by asking you, have you ever had a good or bad first impression that you could talk about?
So actually, over the weekend, there's a new restaurant in a town near mine, and my sister was like, let's go there. And I was like, what is it? She's like, it's new. So the first thing I did is I looked on their website. And I was like, this place looks super cool, because I was really blown away by how their website looked. And so when we got there, I would say that my impression was accurate. However, the music was a little loud, and so I did not like that so much. But I liked the vibe at the place. Uh-huh. And so I was really impressed with that. And I was excited about going there.
When you bring up a good point, really your first impression was their online presence.
Right.
So that website is probably one of the reasons you actually went with your sister. Mm-hmm. And so that's something to keep in mind, childcare centers, as we continue to talk today. Sometimes the first impression happens way before someone actually comes to your center.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to stalk you online.
They are going to stalk you. And I wrote a blog back in the day that talked about the first 8 seconds. They're going to make that impression of you within 8 seconds of coming to wherever they see you first. So whether that's your website or on social. So you have to make it count.
Right. And you can't always look as good as we look right now, but.
Right.
But you can do your best in that first 8 seconds.
Yeah. So, you have to think, what is my website saying about potential families or potential employees that might be coming? Like, am I giving a good impression? What is my social media saying? Is it accurate? Is it up to date? Or have I not done anything in, 6 months or a year?
Right. Because you bring up a good point. You're trying to attract not only new families, but you're trying to attract new employees. Mm-hmm. And again, we keep beating that drum, but right now with staffing and hiring is so difficult, we have to really make sure that we're impressing, those potential candidates with our website and our social media activity for sure.
Yeah, impress them, and then they're going to be excited to want to know. Like I was with the restaurant, I saw the website and I was like, I'm excited to go there because the vibe looks really cool.
Right. And then you get hope to not be let down when you get there.
Right. And so I would say that I was not let down. I just was like, it's really loud in here. But it was, later in the day, and the restaurant was full. It was packed. And I was like, when did they open? Was it week 1? But no, they had been open for a few months, but I hadn't been there. But they were still super busy. So that tells you something.
Yeah, that's a cool story. So I have one to share with you. And this one also is not childcare related. So it was back when I sold my first house. And so the fun fact is that my husband had joined the military, and we had to sell our house in a very short time frame. I had lived there for about 10 years. So it was just this old bungalow house and very drafty, we live in Wisconsin. So the wind, when it blew, it actually blew like through the walls. That's how old this house was. So anyways, I knew I had to really make a good first impression in order to sell this house in the time frame that I needed to. So I actually made custom artwork.
That's a really cool idea.
And well, this was back when I had all this free time.
Right.
Back in the day. So I actually made custom artwork for my bathroom, for my living room, and my office. And I also got a brand new blanket for my bed.
And I bet that just those few little things totally changed like the look and feel of the house.
Right. And it's funny, a new shower curtain, a new bedspread, and the custom artwork, all like literally the first person that walked in my house, she ended up making an offer that day and I ended up selling the house immediately.
That's amazing.
So I know that doesn't always happen, but that first impression really helped sell this house that probably shouldn't have sold that fast.
Right.
But the first thing that she said was, will you include that artwork? Which was funny because it didn't really take me very long. And I don't really call myself an artist, but it must have been good at the time.
Did you sign it or anything?
I did sign it.
Hey, I wonder if she still has it.
I wonder if it's still up there.
That would be really funny.
All right, that's a future podcast. But
we go on a road trip to your old house. Like, hey, can we see the artwork that you have up in here?
Right. So anyway, first impressions that, just like selling your house, whatever you need to do on a daily basis to get people to want to buy into your company. Mm-hmm. So they might not be spending $130,000 on, necessarily to start at your center, but that first impression is just as important.
Well, and I think it's important to know it's the first impression that you're making, and they're bringing their most prized possession to you, like their kids. Like that's a huge deal for them to be comfortable enough and impressed enough to say, yes, I'm comfortable bringing my children here.
Right. Or even just wanting to come work there as an employee. That's when you're going to spend the majority of your time. You often spend way more time with your coworkers than you do with your spouse or your significant other. And so, you want to make sure that that's the right place. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's dive into some other stories. So we visit centers all over the United States. And so we get to see a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So we have a couple stories we're going to share with things that we've seen, that are both good and bad. And, in order for you to maybe take it back to your center, look back at your centers and see if there's things you could change or, improve at your center. But I remember once walking into a new client and I didn't know what door to go into.
Well, that's a problem.
So there were two doors and it was
were they close to each other or?
I wouldn't say they weren't like next to each other. So they weren't like super far apart, but they were far enough apart where I stood in between them wondering, should I go to the right or should I go to the left?
You probably looked really funny. Like, where do I go?
Right. In one of the doors, there was a little plant. So I was like, that's gotta be the door. Cause, put some flowers by the front door. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I chose that door and no, it was the wrong door. And so then I had to.
Did you do like walking into a classroom or something?
No, it wouldn't open. It was locked.
Oh.
So then I had to, put my pride aside, back up, go to the other door. But it got me really thinking about the fact of how many people, come for a prospective tour or they're coming for an interview. You would have thought that would have been the right door because it was the closest to the parking lot. Mm-hmm. How many people get discouraged because they can't get in that first door?
Right. Well, and I think it brings a good point that not every center is a standalone building, that there's only one, like there's a clear entrance. Some are converted from other things. So you have multiple doors and multiple ways in. So which one do you pick?
Right. And another center, exactly. We went to, we were wondering what door we'd go into because there was no signage. Mm-hmm. And they kind of look like houses in a way. Mm-hmm. And so just wondering, is this the door that we enter into? So really pay attention. Don't, take it for granted that people know what entrance to come into your center. Really make it clear by putting signage, putting a welcome sign, putting a welcome mat, whatever you can do to.
Even just dressing it up with flowers or maybe something around the holidays that's more, Christmas or holiday theme with like some poinsettias or something like that, just to make it welcoming. Because first impressions, like you said, are before they even walk in the door. So what are they seeing when they get into the parking lot? Is your entrance clean?
That's a big one.
Is it free of, in Wisconsin, we have to worry about the snow. Like, have you shoveled recently and got it away from the entrance and put it to the side? And in the summer, are you sweeping? Are you getting the leaves off there? Are you getting the excess dirt off there? All that kind of stuff. That's important.
Well, right. Even salt buildup. So because we are in one of the wintry states, you put a lot of salt down on the ground. Well, once that snow melts and that salt is just sitting there and there's no more risk of ice forming, you may want to sweep some of that up, because what happens is it ends up coming into your center, coming onto your mats, and it really makes for a mess when you walk in the front door.
And it dries funky. So warm weather states don't have to worry about this as much, but it still, reigns true. Or spider webs. If you haven't, and I know it's silly things like, yes, spiders happen and they have webs, but just clean them out every once in a while.
I just actually did that by my front door at my house yesterday.
See, it matters.
It's winter here in Wisconsin, and I had an old spider web by my front door. So that's really funny that you bring that up.
And I venture to guess the amount of people that are afraid of spiders
right.
is very high.
All right, side story. All right, who's afraid of spiders listening to this or watching this? I am.
It's like the creepy crawliness of them. They're freaky.
So we lived in Texas for 4 years when my husband was in the Army, and they had huge spiders out in Texas, like giants.
Like, were they really big, or was your perception skewed because you're afraid of them?
When they say everything is bigger in Texas, like they mean everything is bigger in Texas. So like the spiders were ginormous. So my mom ended up staying with me for a little while, and all of a sudden we look up one night and this huge spider is on the wall. So she went and got the vacuum cleaner and vacuumed it. Did she then throw out the bag? Well, so that was like, I was like, you can't just leave the vacuum sitting there. Like, put it out in the garage.
The spider might crawl out of it.
When my husband gets back from Iraq, he'll take care of it. So anyways, that was this.
No, but it's a real thing. Like, you got to clean this. You got to just, clean out the cobwebs, as they say.
You do. Well, let's talk about a good first impression that we've seen. Something that we recently did for someone when they refined their core values and they were kind of rebranding. Remember that?
Yeah. So this particular client, it was already welcoming.
It was so welcoming.
We're like, let's just we have this new brand. We have these new core values. Like, we need to display them. Mm-hmm. So we designed some signage and we got it printed, and all that kind of fancy stuff that goes with that. And we went and we installed everything.
Wait, we installed it.
We installed it.
That was funny in itself.
It was quite the situation.
There were drills and lots of fun stuff. Hammers and
but it took an already really great first impression and made it like a wow experience. Like, impressive. Like, you walked in, you're like, ooh, they care. They're really proud of who they are and what they do. And I think that really showed in their displays when you walked in. Right.
And what that did is, you had mentioned how we kind of rebranded. Mm-hmm. They changed their USP, what differentiates them, their unique selling proposition. And so they were able to communicate that in their signage. And so if you think of that from a tour perspective, mm-hmm. if I've got a potential family coming in and they're touring the center, and all of a sudden you can stop and look at a sign on the wall that talks about what really differentiates them, that opens up that conversation between you and that tour.
Right. And you already should be saying those things on a tour anyways, and we can talk about tours on another time, but to have it right there so that you don't forget it. And if you don't think to mention it, maybe they'll ask about it, to just be like, oh, that's right, I need to talk about this core value or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so since we're on tours, another really great way to make a first impression is, really engaging with that family when they come in. Mm-hmm. So if they bring a child with them on the tour, using that child's name, like mm-hmm. getting down to their level.
Right. I'll never forget, I was going to do a tour, and how our building was we had to essentially let them in the door. We had to unlock it for them to come in. And so it was very important to me to always walk around out of the office and open the door for them, not just buzz them in and say, okay, I'll meet you in there. So I was like, no, I need to open the door for them and say hi and shake their hand. And I don't know what the person's name was. Let's say it was Sarah. I'm like, oh, hi, Sarah. How are you? She's like, you remember my name? And I'm like, well, of course I remembered your name. Like, it's important that I call you by that. But they were so impressed that I just knew who they were.
Right. So I remember we had a board that listed the person's name and what time they were coming in for their tour. So no matter, we had 3 people in our office at the time. So if you weren't there, you knew if someone else was in the office, they would know exactly who was coming for a tour. And you're right. We got up, we answered that door, and we used their name. So that was just that little extra mile.
Shook their hand, that sort of thing.
Shook their hand.
But I think, backtracking a little bit, when they walk in the door, it needs to be welcoming. I think probably frequently at childcare centers, you just get bogged down by the stuff, like all the stuff that you need to have. And so making sure that when they walk in the door, it's clear of that clutter and it's simple and it's welcoming and inviting, especially if there's an outside door and then an inside door, if that makes sense. If there's a vestibule. A vestibule. Or a lobby area that they have to enter in before they can actually get into the center. Making sure that the stuff that's out there, it's not just like junk and dirty or whatever, if that makes sense.
Well, and you'd be surprised. If you're going into the same building every day, all of a sudden, you're not going to see that stuff anymore.
Yeah, you become blind to it.
You really become blind to it. So what we recommend is that you really are intentional. So like one day a week or every day if you could, as you're driving up to your center, be intentional with your mindset and say, you know what, I'm going to drive up to our building today with the intention that I'm a prospective family. And then use your eyes like you are that prospective family.
And how do you feel?
Right. How are you feeling? That's actually a really good point. Thinking back to where do you go where you feel like you get the best customer experience? When you walk in, and I don't even know, if I walk into a Starbucks, you're going to get that atmosphere. And if that's a thing that you really like, so I love it.
Right.
And so I want to have an atmosphere that's kind of buzzing and people are excited to be there and you're going to get something good there. Is that what you feel when you walk into your center?
And does it feel authentic? I think sometimes, and I can't think of a prime example, but you walk into a place and it's like, this doesn't feel right. Like, it doesn't feel like it matches what I thought in my head or what their branding already says. Does it match, or is there like a disconnect there?
Do you remember when I think we were doing a back to school special as Childcare Biz Help? And so what we did is we put down a bunch of centers that we drove to and we took cookies. Remember that?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, we walked into this one center. We go walking in the front door and we were like in the middle of a classroom.
And we're like looking around like,
and everyone was just allowed to
be in here?
Yeah. So that was really awkward. So if that's your situation where people are walking right into your classrooms, you have to somehow think of how are you going to be able to manage that first impression? Because that was one that was very difficult. And what could have made that a good experience is if the teachers and the people that were working there would have smiled at us.
And said hi. We literally were standing there and everyone was looking at us.
Right.
And so we felt really awkward. We're like, maybe someone could say hi. And we just stood there for quite a while before anyone even acknowledged that we were standing there. And people were walking by and they saw us, but no one stopped and said, hi, can I help you? Or are you here to see something? Like, hello, anything. Could have totally taken that from like a not great experience to like a really amazing one.
And honestly, when I go into a new center, usually the first thing I look for is, are the staff making eye contact with me when I walk through the building? They don't know who I am. It's the first time I've been there. Are they making eye contact with me? And then are they smiling? And so that's a really great way, whether it's a potential teacher that's, you're giving a walk around in the building, or it's a potential family. You have to train your staff on how to smile.
And even just saying, hi, how are you? That could, be a big make or break thing.
Exactly. Well, and another thing is your employee break room. So not everyone is privileged to have a break room. And if you do have a break room, how does it look? Because honestly, your break room can tell a lot about your culture. And so is your break room kind of old and the stuff on the walls is kind of outdated? Is there garbage everywhere and food everywhere? You know, we love food in childcare, right? But
we're always here for a potluck.
Right. But you can tell like if food is kind of like thrown all over and it's been kind of laying around there and people don't really respect the space. I guess respecting the space is probably a good way to put it. So making a good first impression whenever I have a new prospect come in for a potential interview, I always love to take them into the break room and let them see for sure. And then your office space. So when you're walking into an office, how does your office space look? And I'll never forget, I went in for an interview and there were papers everywhere in the office that I interviewed in.
Was that overwhelming to you?
It was super overwhelming. So as a leader in your organization, when you're walking into your facility, whether your space is the size of a closet or you have a full big office, look around your office space and ask yourself, are you making a good first impression there? Mm-hmm. It's so important. Don't forget that office space. Your desk. You know, if you've got clutter all over your desk and you're interviewing someone and, they're looking at, papers everywhere and you've got old cans of soda lying around, whatever it is, we've all done that. We're all guilty of it. If someone were to go upstairs in my office right now, I'd be a little afraid. But I'm not interviewing anyone today, so.
But I think also, not that everything has to be put away and not seen, just tidied. And, everything has a place. So do you have a stack of papers in your desk sometimes? Okay, yes, sure. But is it neatly stacked and not just kind of strewn about? And so if you can't put it away at that point in time and you don't have a place for something, because I don't know if anyone else felt that, but we never had enough space for anything.
Right.
Does it just look nice? Is it tidied up?
Well, and I'm going to backtrack because I feel like we skipped a really important piece. When people call on the phone.
Well played.
Well played. First impression. When someone calls you on the phone and they ask you a question about your tuition rates, or do you have any job openings, or whatever it is that they end up calling you about, how did you answer that phone?
You should answer with a smile.
Answer with a smile.
It sounds so silly because the person can't see you. They don't know. But you can hear it in their voice if they're not smiling versus smiling.
Right. So I encourage you to do secret shopper calls on your staff and see how they're responding to phone calls. That doesn't cost you anything. If, have a friend do it, have someone call your center and see how they're answering the phone. Because if I feel like I'm an inconvenience when I call, that's really going to come across, and that's a bad first impression. And
saying that, I know I've taken phone calls, and whether I was in a classroom, I'm always like, is it okay if I call you back? I'm right in the middle of doing something right now that I can't put down, or however you say that to the person. Like, it's okay to ask to do that so you can give them your attention and really listen to what they need.
Yeah, that's a great point. We do that in our trainings all the time. We tell our clients, if you cannot have a really good conversation at that moment, get their name and number. Tell them when you're going to call them back.
Mm-hmm. And call them back.
And then call them back. Yeah, you don't want to forget that.
It happens. You get busy and you write it down and you're like, oh, yeah, I have to call this person back. But being intentional about taking that 5 minutes to call them back, I apologize that I couldn't talk to you before, but I am available now. What can I help you with?
Well, so, we're in the digital age, and not only are people calling you, more often they're emailing you. Mm-hmm. So whether they're emailing you through your website, or they're actually emailing your email, or they're messaging you on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is. So we have to make sure that we're taking a little extra time in how we respond. We can't use short language. We really need to think through our sentences, and we have to make a great first impression with our written word. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes, that's more often than not, we're making impression with how we're communicating our words on, in those emails or in those responses on Facebook.
Not only that, but responding in a timely manner. Not saying that you have to respond the second that you get the email, but I would say within 24 hours, provided it's on a weekend, we should be following up with those potential leads, because if you don't, you're going to lose them.
Right. Even with new employees. Mm-hmm. So if you're not responding to applicants right away, that's a really great point. That's a bad first impression. If I feel like I'm not a priority, again, that's not an impression that I want to make.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's just, I have your resume, I'm going to look it over, I'll get back to you. You're not saying that we have to have the phone interview today or schedule the tour today. Just acknowledging that they said something and you're going to get back to them.
Exactly.
They just want to know that they're heard.
They want to be heard. We all want to be heard.
That's right.
Well, okay. So, people that do come into your centers, you finally get them in. Have you looked at the materials that you're handing? So this is something that you're really good at. This is why we call you our guru, our unicorn, because you're really great at making amazing materials that, really give a great first impression. And so take a step back and look at the materials that you're handing out.
Before even that, make sure you're giving them something.
True.
When we would tour any centers, just a tour center, so, we like to kind of check out what's what. If you get nothing, how are you going to remember them? Even if it's just a flyer that says whatever it says about your center, give them something so that they can remember it. It's like tangible.
Right. And, I always see this. People think they're giving tour packets, but they're giving like enrollment packets instead. Mm-hmm. An enrollment packet is not a tour packet. And I think we need to clarify what the difference is.
Yes. So I just wasn't going to go on say something else, but I'll get to that. So to me, a tour packet is information about your center, whether that be a more in-depth view of your core values, a letter from the owner or from the administrator about your philosophy and your mission, frequently asked questions.
Right.
like,
Stuff that's going to set you apart from the competition, right? Mm-hmm. Something that's going to sell you.
Maybe if you have an amazing food program, you highlight that there.
Or your staff. What if you had a fact sheet about your staff and like a culmination of all the different things that they bring? Whether it's 100 years of early education experience, or you've got someone that, plays guitar, mm-hmm. and, whatever fun facts that you could put like a teacher avatar page.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. So that's a tour packet.
Yeah. So that's something that you would give them when they tour. Mm-hmm. An enrollment packet is paperwork that they get when they're going to enroll in your center. Now, I never would want to give an enrollment packet unless they were going to enroll, mostly because it's like 9,000 pieces of paper.
Right. It's such a waste of money.
It's a waste of paper. It's a waste of resources. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to get lost. So they're going to need another one anyway. And so I would always say, unless they enrolled and they paid their registration fee on the spot, they did not get it. And I could always just well, I can email it or mail it to you after the fact. I'm like, oh, okay, great. But
yeah, that's a really good point. So first impressions, it's what you're handing out. Mm-hmm. Another fun thing is like a swag bag. Mm-hmm. So if someone comes in and tours at the end, they get like a nifty gifty bag.
Now that we want to just talk about everything that we've done, but when we went from 1 to 2 centers when we worked together, and we decided we needed to have playground balls that had our logo on them.
Yes, because they were amazing.
They were amazing. It was quite the investment, but for a while, when families would come in with their small children, we would give them a ball, and you would have thought that we gave them, I don't know, candy, chocolate, you name it. That's what they thought it was. It was like the greatest thing, and the parents were like, they can really have this? I'm like, of course they can have it. Go ahead, take the ball. So just like that little thing that they were like, you're giving this to my kid? Mm-hmm. Of course.
Well, I have to tell you, okay, so you talk about that being an investment, but honestly, I think that was around $1,200, and we had hundreds of these playground balls, and we used them everywhere. Mm-hmm. We were making an impression in the community. So when we would go, we'd go to events, we'd hand out these playground balls, and that's something that people are going to use.
And I'm going to tell you, not just the children get excited about it.
Right.
Adults are like, wow, this is so cool. Like, they would get excited about that too.
Yeah. So when you're looking at these, swag bag or these other like gift items that you can give away for first impressions, think of stuff that people are actually going to want to keep using. Mm-hmm. Instead of, where it ends up in the trash or in the back of the seat.
Telling you, free pens. Everyone wants a free pen.
Free pens are always a good one.
They must, if you're me, then it needs to write nice. But
well, you are a pen snob.
I'm a pen snob.
I am a pen snob too. We could get on a whole subject about pens.
I'm pretty sure at one point in time, just recently, you were writing with a writing utensil and you really liked it. 2 weeks later, we're at a company meeting and Maddie, our video person, was like, "Hey, that's my pen. You took it from me." And you're like, "I did not." And then, but you did take it from her.
All right. So I do not deny that if I see a pen that I really like, I may end up walking away with it. It's just a fact.
So tying that back into this, when I would give out tour packets, I would always make sure that I include a pen. And they're like, "Ooh," I'm like, and they write nice too. I told everybody about it because I was excited about it. Not that they cared, but I did. So I made sure to tell everyone.
Well, it's the little fun things of childcare, right?
Mm-hmm. And most of the time, like, "Oh, sweet, I can always use a pen." You're like, "Of course."
All right. So when thinking of first impressions, you may, as a leader in your childcare center, know exactly what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Do not forget to train your staff.
Right.
Right? I mean, if your staff doesn't understand their role in making a first impression, then you can't hold them to that expectation. Mm-hmm. So make sure that I would bring it up every staff meeting. I would talk through, like, how are our first impressions going? How are we doing? Here's some great things I've seen you guys doing.
Is there anywhere that we can improve? Does anyone have any new or different ideas? Because there's nothing wrong with changing the idea.
Well, and like, you can mention, the other day we had a tour and I noticed that a bunch of you greeted the tour as they were coming down the hallway, that you were smiling. Thank you for engaging with the family. So, whatever you can do to help train your staff so that it's just not solely on your shoulders. So if you see a piece of paper as you're walking down the hallway, everyone should know if they see trash or a piece of paper or whatever, they should bend down and pick it up.
Right. And I think that typically goes without saying, but sometimes they just need that reminder.
You think it goes without saying.
I know, but that reminder, like, hey, like this, we need to take ownership of our center. This is all of our responsibilities. Let's all take care of it.
So I am going to share a little thing here.
I'm a little bit nervous for this.
So one time at our center, I planted a piece of trash on the floor.
I'm so glad I wasn't taking a drink of water when you just said that. That could have been bad.
I did it to see how long it would take for someone to actually pick it up. And I watched employee after employee pass by it. And then the one person that bent down and grabbed it, I got up, I high-fived them out, and they were caught off guard. But I was I planted that there to see who would pick it up, and you're the first one out of 10. So don't take it for granted that your staff is going to know to do that.
Right.
That you expect that you expect them to wipe the fingerprints off the glass. That was a big, twice a day minimum, we were wiping fingerprints off a glass. So first impressions, super important. Don't take them for granted. Look at your center from a fresh perspective on a daily basis.
And if you can't do that, have someone else do it for you that is going to be objective and be honest with you. And sometimes it might not be easy to hear, but it's important. And sometimes you're aware of it, but you don't know how to fix it. So having a fresh set of eyes come in and say, what if you did this, this, or this might be really helpful.
Well, and don't underestimate. I know we started off this podcast today talking about how we looked. And I just want to circle back to that. The way your staff looks at work is also a first impression. Mm-hmm. Those families that are walking in are going to see exactly what your staff is wearing. Okay, so we need to make sure we're training our staff on how you want them to look. Because unfortunately, looks, that is the first thing they're gonna look at you and they're gonna start judging you. So if you're wearing sweatpants with something across the butt, whatever it is, you need to make sure that, you're training your staff on what to wear, what not to wear, that kind of thing.
I'm gonna add one more layer to this. How it smells when you walk in the door.
We didn't even touch on that.
And this is the thing, is I would say chances are a baby room is going to be one of the first rooms you're going to see. So you're going to have the baby room smell,
Right.
You know, like diapers. It's not pleasant, but just being aware that if it's something worse than normal, like let's take out the garbage, or do we need to put an air freshener in to just kind of freshen up that area?
It's actually, that's really, I'm glad you brought that up. Otherwise I would have kicked myself if we would have completed this podcast and didn't bring that up. But we are going to have smells. It's childcare. You just can't get around it. But I will tell you, you know when you walk into a center that's clean, and you know when you walk into one that's not. I mean, that really is the first thing. Your nose is really that first thing. So yeah, pay attention to those smells for sure.
But also, all of this can be really overwhelming. So don't try to tackle it all at once. Pick one thing, focus on it, do it well, and then move on. Exactly.
And just be clear with expectations. That's really all you can do. So my challenge, I always love to give an overhaul challenge. My challenge to you is, you know, take a notebook and a pen, drive up to your facility, and look at it from the eyes of a potential employee or potential family. You know, really take that perspective. Write down anything that looks old, anything that's cluttered or out of place. Look at your signage. Look at signage on your front doors. You know, is it tape falling off? Do you have too much signage? Is ink running down? So be careful what's on your front door. Look at your hallways and all that stuff throughout your center. And don't forget to look at your playground. And then do this at least, if you can do it daily, if not once a week. That's my challenge to you, my overhaul challenge to you today.
That's a good one.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we did it. So that was First Impressions. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is Daycare Overhaul.
Doing childcare
doing
better.
Childcare better. And we appreciate you for watching or listening to us. And we love when everyone shares overhaul wins, things that you've done at your center that you've overhauled and you've seen a really great result from. Share that with us and hashtag overhaul win.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Childcare Biz Help.
Right. Oh, and one last thing. If you have an idea for a podcast, we really want to hear from you because we would love to do stories. We'd like to talk about issues that you're really interested in. So email us at info@childcarebizhelp.com.
And we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.